I did not realize this moment my life would begin to change was the same moment everything felt like it was falling apart. It started on a freezing Tuesday morning in Denver, the kind of morning when the air cuts through your coat and your breath hangs in front of you like a small cloud of worry. I was holding my daughter Mia by the hand as tightly as I could, guiding her into the crowded coffee shop on the corner of Blake Street, trying to keep her steady, while balancing her small rolling medical pole with the other hand. She was 4 years old, too young to understand why her tiny body betrayed her, too young to know the name of the disease she kept fighting, but old enough to know she was tired. Her little face was pale, almost translucent, under the soft fluorescent lights, and the knitted pink hat she wore seemed too big for her head after so many months of chemotherapy. The coffee shop was packed with people escaping the biting cold. Every table was full, and I scanned the room, hoping for a miracle. But all I saw were laptop screens, busy adults, and the faint judgment that comes whenever a sick child coughs in a small space. I squeezed Mia's hand, ready to tell her we would get our drinks to go, when she pulled away from me with surprising speed. She slipped from my fingers, tugging her medical pole behind her with a small squeak of plastic wheels, and walked with single-minded determination toward the one table in the room I absolutely did not want her to approach. A tall man in a tailored black suit sat alone at a spacious 4-seat table near the window. He looked like someone who had never been late to anything in his life, a man whose presence carried the quiet command of someone used to being obeyed. His dark hair was neatly combed, his jaw tense, and the Bluetooth earpiece in his ear told me he was in the middle of a business meeting. His gaze was focused out the window, distant and heavy, the kind of look that suggested he had not slept well in a long time. People naturally kept their distance from him almost instinctively. Everything about him said, "Do not disturb." So naturally, that was exactly where Mia went. She stopped right at the edge of his table and tilted her head back to look up at him. Her voice came out soft and fragile, but clear enough to cut through the low hum of the shop. "Mister, can I sit here?" My heart stopped. Several people turned to look at us, their expressions a mix of curiosity and that silent question parents know too well, which was, "Why is your child talking to a stranger?" I hurried toward her, apologizing under my breath, already forming the words that would pull her away without making a scene. I was ready to tell her we had to leave right that moment. But before I could reach her, the man slowly removed his earpiece, set it down beside his untouched cup of coffee, and looked at Mia with an expression that startled me. It was not annoyance. It was something else, something deeper, something like recognition mixed with a shard of old pain. He studied her tired face, her pale cheeks, her little hand gripping the stuffed bunny she always carried, and his voice came out low and steady. "Of course." He pulled out the chair beside him, the leather scraping softly against the floor. Then, without asking, without hesitating, he loosened the expensive charcoal scarf around his neck and gently draped it over Mia's shoulders. She blinked at him in surprise, then smiled in that innocent way only a sick child can. A smile filled with trust she gave so easily to the world, even when the world had given her so little back. For a moment, I froze, unsure of what to say. In America, you do not let your child sit with a stranger. You do not allow someone you have never met to get close no matter how kind they seem. You do not let your guard down. But Mia looked up at me with eyes that quietly begged for a moment to rest, and the warmth from the scarf made her relax just a little. I felt torn between fear and gratitude, between the rules I lived by as a single mother and the reality that sometimes you are too tired to fight those rules. I took a cautious step forward and whispered thank you, ready to take the scarf back, but the man simply shook his head and said, "She looks cold." His voice was calm, almost gentle, yet it carried the weight of someone who had spoken very little kindness in a very long time. Mia climbed into the chair beside him with effort, her legs swinging above the floor, and she nestled into the oversized scarf as if it had been made just for her. I hovered awkwardly, waiting for the moment he would ask us to leave, but instead, he turned toward me and said, "You can sit too if you want." His eyes were a striking blue, but they held a sadness that startled me. It was a sadness that did not belong to a stranger in a coffee shop, a sadness too personal to be shared with anyone, let alone us. I sat across from him because Mia needed the chair more than I needed my pride. and because something in his expression told me he understood more about pain than he let on. I did not know his name. I did not know why a wealthy man with a flawless suit sat alone with a coffee grown cold. I did not know why he looked at my daughter like she was something he wanted to protect, but was afraid to touch. All I knew was that letting her sit there felt like a mistake, a strange break in every rule I lived by. I just did not know yet that it would become the best decision of my life. I told myself I would never see him again. That was the safest way to think about strangers who showed sudden kindness, especially the expensive kind, the kind wrapped in cashmere and quiet eyes full of stories they never said out loud. After we left the coffee shop that morning, I avoided looking back even once, afraid that if I did, I would see him watching us, and then I would start wondering why a man who looked like he belonged in glossy magazine spreads had been so gentle with a sick child he had never met. I was busy focusing on the immediate problem, which was Mia swaying as she walked, her small limbs trembling under the strain of too many procedures and too little rest. Our clinic was just a few blocks away, and I carried her halfway there because she kept stumbling, whispering that she was fine, even as her head drooped onto my shoulder. When we finally reached the urgent care center, the nurse took Mia's temperature and said she was stable enough to rest at home, but needed fluids and sleep. I nodded along, pretending I was calm. Pretending this was routine, because in our life, everything had to look like it was under control even when nothing truly was. I gathered Mia up, thanked the nurse, and hurried outside with a grocery bag of medications and discharge papers. And that was when I froze. Standing a few feet away from the clinic entrance was the same man from the coffee shop leaning against a black SUV that looked far too polished for the neighborhood we were in. He was holding something in his hand and staring at it like he was debating whether to leave or stay. When his eyes lifted and saw us, his posture straightened just slightly, as if he had been caught in a moment he was not prepared to explain. I tightened my grip on Mia, instinctively protective. I did not understand why he was there or how long he had been waiting, and every part of me wanted to step back. But before I could say anything, he lifted the object in his hand, the small pink hat Mia had dropped in the coffee shop without noticing. He took one careful step toward us as if he wanted to be sure he did not startle me, and said, "I tried to catch you before you left, but you moved quickly." She dropped this. His voice was calm and steady, but something about the way he held the hat made my chest tighten. It was not the gesture of a man trying to force a connection. It was the gesture of a man who understood that returning something small and precious mattered more than saying the right thing. I reached out and took the hat from him, murmuring thank you, expecting him to nod and walk away. That was the normal script. That was what people did. But he did not leave. He looked at Mia for a long moment, taking in her sagging eyelids and the way her head leaned heavily against my shoulder, and he asked quietly, "Is she okay?" I opened my mouth to say yes, because that is what I always said, but for the first time in a long time, the word refused to come out. Maybe it was exhaustion or fear or the memory of how gently he draped the scarf over her, but I told the truth without meaning to. "She is tired. She has been tired for months." His expression shifted barely a tiny crack in a mask I had not realized he was wearing. He nodded once like he understood more than I had said. Mia lifted her head enough to mumble, "Hi, scarf man," which made the corner of his mouth tug in something almost like a smile. He crouched slightly to meet her eyes, but did not touch her or move too close. I admired that without wanting to. "She looks like she fights hard," he said, and for reasons I could not name, my throat tightened at those words. People did not usually see the fighter in Mia. They saw the illness, the tubes, the weakness. They rarely saw the child. He stood again and seemed to fumble for words before saying, "I am not trying to intrude. I just wanted to return what she left behind." Then he paused, hesitated, and added, "If you ever need someone to call for a ride or for help, I mean, if she needs urgent care again and you cannot find transport, I live nearby. I can drive." It was the kind of offer that should have alarmed me. A stranger offering rides to a single mother was the exact thing you avoided at all costs. But the way he said it carried no expectation, no pressure, just quiet sincerity. I did not accept. I did not reject. I simply nodded because I did not know what else to do. Then he stepped back, giving us more space, more safety, more respect than most people did, even when they knew us. He said softly, "Take care of her and himself," walked to his car, and drove away without looking back. It was only after he disappeared into the traffic that I realized something unexpected. In a city full of people who rushed past us every day without noticing we existed, this stranger had seen us, truly seen us. And that kind of kindness never felt normal. It felt dangerous in the way hope always does. The next time I saw him, I told myself it was a coincidence. It had to be. Life for people like me did not come with mysterious men in dark suits who reappeared like well-timed shadows. Life came with medical bills and second jobs, and nights spent calculating which groceries I could skip to afford Mia's next prescription. But 3 days after the hat incident, I walked into the same coffee shop at the same hour, and there he was again, sitting at the same table by the window, hands wrapped around a cup he did not seem interested in drinking. For a split second, I considered leaving. My heart stuttered in a way I did not like, the kind of jolt that makes you feel you are stepping into something you cannot undo. But Mia spotted him before I could turn around. Her little legs moved faster than I had seen in days, and she tugged her medical pole forward as she ran toward him, calling out, "Scarf man," with the delight of a child who remembered safety. He looked up at the sound of her voice, and something softened in his eyes again, a flicker of warmth that seemed almost involuntary. I hurried after her, whispering apologies even before I reached the table, but he shook his head and said, "It is fine," in a tone so gentle it disarmed every warning bell in me. Mia climbed into the same chair she had used before, her legs dangling high above the ground, and set her stuffed bunny on the table, as if resuming a conversation they had left unfinished. He reached into a paper bag and placed a small chocolate muffin in front of her. I froze, instincts on alert. He must have noticed my expression because he added quickly, "I did not know if she would be here, but she liked this last time. I bought it just in case." Something about the honesty in his voice made it difficult to be suspicious, even though caution was the only armor I had left. Mia took a small bite and hummed contentedly, leaning her head against the scarf still folded in her lap from that first day. I stood beside the table, unsure whether to sit or leave. He glanced at the empty chair across from him, then back at me, but he did not insist. He simply said, "You can join her if you want." This time, I sat down, mostly because my legs hurt from another sleepless night, partly because a small part of me wanted to understand why a man like him kept appearing in the quiet corners of our life. The morning unfolded in a peculiar way. He did not ask personal questions. He did not pry. He simply let Mia talk, answering her stories with quiet patience, as if listening to her was the most natural thing in the world. He read the menu to her in a low, steady voice, because chemotherapy made her eyes sensitive and she sometimes struggled to focus. He never once touched her without her initiating it. Every inch of his body language stayed respectful, cautious, almost reverent. That restraint, that gentleness made me uneasy in a way kindness sometimes does when you are not used to receiving it. After about 20 minutes, my phone buzzed with a reminder for Mia's medication. I reached into my bag to pull out her dose, but as I twisted the cap, I noticed my hands shaking. I hated letting anyone see me struggle, but he noticed immediately. He did not reach over or try to take the bottle from me. He simply watched with a level of focus that made it clear he was concerned without trying to control anything. Mia noticed too. "Mommy, your hands are cold," she whispered. It was not cold. It was fear. Fear that if I let someone help me even for a second, I would fall apart in ways I could not recover from. Fear that this man was too kind for no reason that made sense. Fear that I might want to believe him. When I finally administered the medication, his voice came softly. "You are doing everything right." It was such a simple statement, but it hit me with the force of a collapsing roof. No one had said anything like that to me since the day Mia was diagnosed. No one had told me I was enough. I blinked hard, forcing back the pressure of tears. When Mia finished her muffin, she asked him if he could read her bunny a story. He chuckled softly and said, "I do not have a book, but I can try." He made up a little tale about a brave rabbit who traveled across snowy mountains to bring sunshine back to its family. His voice was calm, deep steady, and Mia listened with her whole tired heart. When he finished the story, she whispered, "You sound like a dad." Something broke in his expression at that, a flash of grief so raw and quick it almost made me gasp. He recovered instantly, but the damage to my assumptions had already been done. This was not a lonely businessman looking for attention. This was a man with a wound deep enough to bleed through even his quietest moments. Trouble walks on 2 feet and sits where you least expect it, my mother used to say. For the first time, I wondered if I was the trouble in this situation, or if he was, or if we both were in ways that might collide. When it was time to leave, Mia reached for his hand. He looked at me first, asking permission with nothing but his eyes. I nodded because refusing would have broken her heart. He held her tiny hand with a caution that made my throat tighten and walked us to the door. Outside, the wind had picked up again. He adjusted the scarf around her shoulders with the same gentle touch as before. "Take care," he said simply. Then he stepped back as if giving us permission to walk away. We did, but as I carried Mia down the sidewalk, I could not shake the feeling that trouble had already entered our lives quietly, and I was not sure whether I wanted it to leave. I used to believe nights were safer than days. The world was quieter after dark, easier to navigate when most people had gone home to their warm living rooms and soft routines. But the night everything changed proved me wrong in ways I will never forget. It began with a cold front sweeping through the city, the kind that coated the sidewalks in thin ice and turned every breath into a puff of vapor. Mia had been unusually tired that evening, her small body heavy in my arms as I carried her up the stairs to our apartment. She fell asleep while I read her a story, her little fingers curled around my shirt like she always did when she felt scared but tried to be brave. I kissed her forehead and stayed there for a long moment, letting myself believe she was safe as long as she lay in that small bed under the faded unicorn blanket. After she drifted off, I tiptoed into the kitchen to wash the few dishes we owned. Money was thin, my nerves were thinner, and the quiet felt like a thin piece of glass between us and the world. That was when the power flickered. Once, twice, 3 times before going out completely. The apartment fell into darkness. Outside, the streetlights dimmed as well. I checked my phone and saw a neighborhood alert reporting outages from the storm. I lit a candle and placed it on the counter, trying not to panic. Mia hated the dark. I stepped toward her room to check on her when a sudden noise froze me mid-step, a heavy thud against the hallway door. My heart leapt into my throat. Our building was old, the walls thin, and noises traveled easily, but this sound was deliberate. Another thud, then a voice muffled but alarmingly close. "I know she is inside. Open the door." I clutched the doorframe, forcing myself to breathe. I peeked through the peephole and saw 2 figures standing in the dimly lit hall. Both men wore dark jackets, their hoods pulled low. One held a clipboard to look official, but his posture was wrong, too tense, too aggressive. The other tapped impatiently on his phone. My stomach tightened with dread. They knocked again, harder. "Ma'am, we are from the insurance department. We need to discuss your claim for your daughter." My blood ran cold. I had not filed any claim. I had no insurance left to even file anything. I stepped back quietly, pulse hammering. They were lying. Why? My first instinct was to grab Mia and run, but the fire escape outside her window was coated in ice, and the drop was too steep. I crept into her room anyway. She was awake now, sitting up with frightened eyes that glistened in the darkness. "Mommy, who is that?" I pressed a finger to my lips. "Shh, baby, it is okay. Just stay quiet." The knocking grew louder. Then the doorknob rattled. Mia whimpered softly. I held her close, every nerve in my body screaming. I reached for my phone, but the battery icon blinked red with a 1%. I had no one to call. No one except the one person I should not call. The stranger who kept appearing in our lives. The man I barely knew. The man whose kindness unsettled me because it felt too much like hope. Adrian. My hands trembled as I dialed his number, praying he would answer, praying I had not misjudged him. The phone rang once before dying in my hand. A full blank screen. No power, no battery, nothing. I swallowed panic and gathered Mia in my arms. The men were arguing outside now, their voices low but sharp. I caught bits and pieces. The girl. Sick. Easy. It felt like the air had left the room. Whoever they were, they had come with intention, and it was not about insurance. My mind raced. I remembered a pamphlet at the clinic warning parents about medical scams and predatory groups targeting vulnerable families with sick children. My throat tightened. I had to do something. I locked her bedroom door even though it was flimsy and would not stop anyone determined enough. Then I pressed her against my chest and whispered, "You are safe with me, I promise." Footsteps moved closer in the hallway. Something heavy slammed against the main door as if they were testing its strength. I backed away, gripping Mia tighter. She clung to me, trembling. Then, suddenly, the hallway went silent. No voices, no footsteps, no breathing on the other side of the door. Just stillness that felt more dangerous than noise. My pulse pounded so loudly I could hear it echoing in my ears. Then a single knock made me jump. Not loud, not forceful. Just one calm knock. Grace. It was a voice I recognized instantly. Deep, steady, controlled. Adrian. I hurried to the living room and peered through the peephole again. He stood alone in the dark hallway, snow melting in his hair, his expression tight with worry. The two men were gone. I unlocked the door and pulled it open with shaking hands. He stepped inside without waiting and shut the door behind us. "Where is Mia?" he asked, voice low. I held her up, still shaking. She buried her face into my shoulder. He scanned her quickly, checking her breathing, then turned to me. "Did they touch the door? Did they try to enter?" I nodded, unable to speak. His jaw clenched. He stepped toward the door and examined the lock with grim focus. Then he spoke in a voice that made my skin prickle. "They were not here for insurance. They were following you. They were watching you earlier today." I stared at him, unable to process the meaning behind his words. "How do you know that?" He looked back at me, eyes fierce with something I could not name. "Because I have seen those men before, and they do not stop until something stops them." Fear coiled around my spine. For the first time that night, I realized something terrifying. The men had come for us, but Adrian had come for them. I never understood how comfort could feel so close to fear until the night Adrian stood in my living room, snow melting off his coat, shadows stretching behind him like he had walked straight out of a storm. Mia clung to me, her tiny fingers curled into my sweater, her breaths uneven from panic. I held her close, still trembling, but some part of me was drawn to the steady way Adrian paced the doorway, checking the frame, inspecting the lock, then moving silently across the room as if he knew every corner by instinct. He stopped by the window, scanned the street below, and only when he seemed certain the danger had passed did he finally turn back toward us. "You need to leave tonight," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but something underneath it pulsed with urgency. My heart lurched. "Leave? Go where?" His gaze softened just enough to take the edge off his words, but the seriousness remained. "You cannot stay here, not after they tried your door. They will come back." I felt my knees weaken. The world around me blurred for a second. I sat on the couch, clutching Mia as she tucked her head under my chin. The candle on the counter flickered, casting warm orange light across Adrian's face, making him look both fierce and heartbreakingly tired. "Why were you even here?" I asked in a whisper. "How did you know?" He exhaled slowly and rubbed the back of his neck. "I was on my way home and happened to pass your block." Something felt wrong. "I saw two men watching your building from the alley." That is all he said, but something about the way he said it told me it was not the full truth. Still in that moment, I did not care. Someone had come for us, and he had come for them. I pressed my cheek against Mia's soft hair, trying to slow my breathing. "This cannot be happening. I do not understand why anyone would target us. We have nothing." Adrian crouched in front of me, his eyes steady focused, pulling me back from the brink of panic like an anchor thrown into rising water. "Grace, listen to me. People who take advantage of families like yours do not care whether you have anything or not. They look for fear. They look for desperation." I looked away, shame prickling up my spine. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull back, but I did not. His hand rested gently on my knee, grounding me. "You are not weak," he said, as if reading the thoughts tearing through me. You are doing everything alone for a little girl who is fighting harder than anyone should. That does not make you a target. It makes you brave." His words hit me harder than I expected, and I had to blink away a sudden sting of tears. Mia stirred in my arms, sleepy and confused. "Mommy, what happened?" I brushed her hair back. "Nothing you need to worry about, baby. We are okay." Adrian's voice was gentle when he spoke next. "We are leaving as soon as she falls asleep. You and Mia can stay at my place tonight." I tensed immediately. "I barely know you. You know me enough to trust that I would not let anything happen to either of you," he replied, not confrontational, just matter of fact. "And you know staying here is not safe." I hated that he was right. I hated that my entire sense of independence, every wall I had built around my life, suddenly felt like flimsy cardboard. And yet the only person who made me feel less alone was a man I barely understood. I tucked Mia in my arms and stood up. "Let me pack a few things." Adrian nodded and walked back to the window, watching the street again. I gathered Mia's medicine, her pajamas, her bare sunny, my purse, and a sweater. My hands shook the entire time. When I returned, Adrian was holding my coat open, helping me slip into it with a quiet tenderness that disarmed me more than anything else that night. "I am not used to people helping me," I muttered. He gave me a small smile, but there was a shadow behind it. "You should be. You deserve that." We stepped into the hall cautiously, Adrian walking first, scanning each corner. The power was still out the building, lit only by moonlight pouring through narrow windows. The stairwell echoed with every footstep. I held Mia tighter. She was heavy with sleep, her warm breath brushing against my collarbone. When we reached the street, cold wind rushed over us. Adrian placed a steady hand on my back and guided us toward a car parked a few spaces down. I stopped, startled. "You drive this." It was not flashy, but it was clearly expensive. He did not answer. Instead, he opened the back door, adjusting Mia in my arms so she would not wake as I set her in the seat. He buckled the seatbelt with a tenderness that made my throat tighten. Once inside, the warmth of the car thawed my fingers. Adrian drove with quiet precision, his jaw-tight eyes flicking to the mirror every few seconds. "Are we being followed?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Not anymore. Anymore." The word landed heavily in my chest. I watched him as he drove. His posture controlled, his breathing measured, his eyes sharp and aware. Whoever Adrian was, he had lived a life far removed from calm mornings and casual kindness. And for the first time, I wondered if I should be afraid. But fear and comfort tangled inside me so tightly I could not separate them. When we arrived at his building, I hesitated again. It was a tall, well-lit structure with security cameras and a guarded entry. Nothing in my life belonged in a place like that. He parked and turned to me. "You are safe now." Something in his voice cracked on the word safe, as if it was not a word he used often, maybe not even for himself. I met his eyes, my heart pounding. "I do not know why you care so much," I said quietly. He held my gaze. "One day I will tell you, but tonight you need rest, and Mia needs peace." His honesty frightened me. So did the comfort I felt just sitting there with him, because comfort meant possibility, and possibility meant risk. Still, when he offered his hand to help me out of the car, I took it. And that was the moment I realized something dangerous. I was beginning to trust him. I never thought silence could reveal more about a person than their words, but living in Adrian's home for just one night taught me how wrong I was. His apartment was nothing like the sleek, cold bachelor penthouses I had imagined wealthy men owned. It was warm, lived in, filled with books stacked crookedly on shelves, soft blankets draped over couches, framed photographs of cityscapes and oceans, but not a single picture of a person. Not one face, not one smile, not one memory with another human being. That should have been my first clue. Mia had fallen asleep almost immediately in the guest room he set up for her, a room too cozy to be unused. A nightlight shaped like a tiny moon glowed softly on the dresser. Adrian had switched it on without me asking, saying in a quiet voice, "Most kids sleep better with one." He said it like someone who knew, like someone who had once tucked in a child and cared about the small things. After she settled, I stepped into the living room where Adrian stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the snow. I lingered near the couch, unsure if I should disturb him. He noticed, of course. He always noticed. "Do you need water?" "Food, anything?" he asked without turning around. "No," I whispered. "I need answers." That made him turn finally. His eyes were darker than usual, as if holding back more than he wanted to say. I swallowed hard, gathering courage I did not fully possess. "You show up when things go wrong. You knew those men. You knew what they were. And this place," I glanced around. "You don't live like an ordinary person. Not even close. Who are you really?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, looking away. For a long moment, I thought he was going to lie, or deflect, or walk away. But instead, he surprised me. He sat down on the edge of the couch, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "There are things I am not proud of," he said quietly. "Things I walked away from. Things I can't walk back to." My heartbeat quickened. His voice was too steady, too controlled, like someone who had repeated these words many times but rarely out loud. "Grace," he continued, "I wasn't a good man for a long time. Not in the way that matters." I remained standing, my back pressed against the arm of the chair, watching him like he might disappear if I blinked. "Bad people don't help strangers," I whispered. He huffed a humorless breath. "You'd be surprised. Some of the worst men do the kindest things when they're trying to make up for the damage they've done." The room thickened with tension. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit I had never seen him display before. "I know how to follow people," he said. "I know how to spot danger long before most people notice anything is wrong. I know how to disappear." He looked up then straight at me. "And I know exactly what kind of men came to your door." My stomach tightened. "How?" He hesitated. "Because once many years ago I worked with them." The air left my lungs. My body froze, but not from terror, at least not fully. It was shock confusion, the strange sense that the puzzle pieces I had scattered in my mind were suddenly sliding into place. "You were one of them," I whispered. His jaw clenched. "I was young, angry, good at finding people, good at scaring them, good at getting them to pay debts they owed or debts they didn't." He shook his head. "I was useful, for the wrong reasons." My palms were sweating. I held on to the fabric of the chair, just to steady myself. "Why did you leave?" I asked. His eyes flickered, and something in them cracked for the first time. A raw vulnerability. Pain. Regret. "Because someone innocent got hurt," he said in a voice that sounded scraped from bone. "A family. A child." I felt the blood drain from my face. He didn't say more, but the way he swallowed hard told me that child had mattered to him in ways I could not yet imagine. After that, he continued, I walked away from everything. Everyone. I changed my name. I left the city for years. I thought I could outrun the worst parts of myself. He looked up at me, and the honesty in his expression hit me like a tidal wave. But sometimes the past doesn't let go just because you regret it. I stepped closer without realizing it. My voice trembled. "So, you think those men came for us because of you?" "No," he said firmly. "They came for you because you're vulnerable. But when they saw me, everything changed. They recognized me. And that means they won't stop." A sharp sting flashed through my chest. I wrapped my arms around myself. "So we're in danger because you tried to save us." He stood then slowly, like he did not want to scare me. But it wasn't him I feared. It was the possibility that I needed him far more than I wanted to admit. "I won't let anything happen to you or Mia," he said. His voice was low, certain solid. "I couldn't save the last child who needed me, but I will save her." My throat tightened, and to my horror, tears blurred my vision. Adrian stepped closer but stopped halfway, as if unsure whether he had the right. "Grace," he whispered, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect trust. But I am here, and I'm not leaving." Something inside me broke. The fear, the exhaustion, the unbearable weight of doing everything alone for so long, it all hit me at once. Before I could stop myself, I sank down onto the couch. My hands covered my face, and Adrian, with a carefulness that made my heart ache, sat beside me close but not touching until I leaned just slightly toward him. Then he let me. For the first time since my life fell apart, I let someone be strong for me. And that was the first time I saw the crack in Adrian's wall. Not because he was weak, but because he finally let himself be seen. The days following Adrian's confession felt like walking across a frozen lake, knowing the ice was thin, but unable to turn back because going forward was the only choice left. Mia settled easily into his home, as if her small body sensed safety before her mind fully understood it. She would curl up on the couch with her blanket, ask him questions about the city lights, and he would always answer her with a gentleness I didn't expect from someone who claimed to have once been dangerous. I was still learning how to breathe around him. Every time I looked at him, I saw the cracks in his armor, the child he could not save, the life he abandoned, the ghosts he carried like invisible scars. Still, I wanted to trust him, needed to trust him. But trust is fragile, especially when it's been broken before. And mine was tested the moment I opened his front door that afternoon and saw a stranger standing there. She was tall, blonde, sharp in a sleek black coat, her eyes colder than the winter outside. She didn't knock. She waited, like she knew exactly who she would find on the other side. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her gaze drifted past my shoulder into the apartment before settling back on me with a slow, calculated smile. "Your Grace." It wasn't a question. My fingers tightened around the door. "I didn't catch your name." She stepped forward just enough to make me uneasy. "I'm Nora. I work with Adrian." Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Work with? Not worked with. Present tense. She looked too polished, too poised to belong to Adrian's broken past, but she also didn't match the softness of the life he lived now. "He's not here," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know. He told me to meet him here." My stomach twisted. He told her to come here, to his home, to the one place he had made feel safe for me and Mia. I swallowed hard. "You can wait outside." "He won't be long." She arched an eyebrow. "I'm not here to cause problems, Grace." The way she said my name made me feel small, like I was out of place in every possible way. "I need to speak with him. It's important." I didn't move from the doorway. I wouldn't let her inside, not until I knew why she was here. She seemed to study me like she was flipping through invisible files in her mind, evaluating weaknesses. "You don't know much about him, do you?" she said softly. I stiffened. "I know enough." "Do you?" The way she asked made my heart sink. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway where Mia was playing, humming softly to herself. A flicker of discomfort flashed across Nora's face, something like guilt or pity. "You should be careful," she said quietly. "Not because he'll hurt you, but because the world he used to live in doesn't disappear, just because he walked away." The comment stung because it echoed my deepest fear. She stepped back slightly, giving me space, but not comfort. "Tell him Nora stopped by." She turned and walked toward the elevator. I closed the door and had to lean against it for a moment, my pulse racing. When Adrian returned 15 minutes later, snow dusting his shoulders, I saw it immediately, the way his expression shifted when I said her name. He froze. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with resignation. Like he'd been expecting this moment. "What did she want?" he asked quietly. I crossed my arms more to stop them from trembling than anything else. "She said she works with you." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "She did. Once. A long time ago. Before I left. She said the world you used to live in doesn't disappear." His shoulders tensed. He didn't deny it. Didn't try to soften it. Just looked at me with an expression so raw it unsettled me. "Grace," he said slowly, "Nora isn't dangerous, but she is a reminder of a part of my life that I don't want touching you." She looked at Mia, I whispered, voice cracking, like she was worried. Adrian's eyes softened. He walked closer, stopping inches away from me. "Nora knows I'm not that person anymore, but the people we used to work for, the ones who still want things from me, they don't believe anyone truly leaves." A chill ran up my spine. "Are we in danger because of them?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation the truth spoke before he did. I took a shaky breath. "Why didn't you tell me someone might come here?" His voice was quiet. "I didn't want to scare you. I wanted you to feel safe. Safe doesn't come from lies." I whispered. His expression cracked just barely. They're not lies. They're omissions. Omissions that matter, I said. Adrian, I left everything behind to protect Mia. I came here because I trusted you. If there are things you're not telling me, I need to know now. He lowered his head for a moment. When he looked up again, there was something wounded in his eyes. I'm trying, he whispered. I'm trying to be honest, but some truths don't protect people. They only hurt them. His confession softened me, but not enough to erase the ache in my chest. What do those people want from you? He exhaled a slow breath that trembled at the end. Money, information, leverage. They think I still have access to things I walked away from years ago. Do you? No, he said firmly. But they don't care. They want to pull me back in, and they'll use whatever leverage they think will work. The realization hit me like a strike of lightning. Us, I whispered. They'll use us. Adrian's silence was the only answer I needed. My heart pounded painfully. I walked past him toward the window, staring out at the city view I had once thought was beautiful. Now all I saw were shadows between the buildings, vulnerabilities, places someone could hide. After a long moment, Adrian stepped beside me, not touching, but close enough that I felt his presence like warmth in a cold room. Grace, he said gently, I won't let them hurt you. I won't let them near Mia. I swear it. I turned to him, and for the first time I didn't see just the man who had saved us. I saw the man he used to be. The man with a past that was now standing, living, breathing right in front of me. And no matter how hard he tried to protect us, we were already part of his story, whether we wanted to be or not. I thought danger announced itself loudly with flashing lights or shattering glass, or the sound of men pounding on doors in the dead of night. But the moment my world truly collapsed came quietly, the kind of quiet that feels wrong, like the air has stalled or the universe is holding its breath. It began the next morning when I stepped out of Adrian's building to take Mia to her appointment. Her small hand tucked inside mine, her pink hat crooked over her ear the way it always was. The sidewalk felt normal at first, too normal, until a dark sedan at the end of the block caught my eye. The car wasn't unusual. The way it was parked was too far from the curb, engine idling, windows tinted darker than legal. Adrian had taught me to look for details like that without meaning to. I squeezed Mia's hand and kept walking, pretending not to notice, pretending the chill in my spine was just cold air. We made it halfway down the block before the passenger door cracked open just enough for someone inside to slide a camera lens through the gap. My heart stopped. Not a gun, a camera. But the fear was the same. I pulled Mia close and hurried to the corner, my breathing uneven, but before I could cross, a voice behind me said Grace Fisher. I turned. A man with perfect teeth and a too-friendly smile approached us holding a microphone from a local news station. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw the red light glowing on the attached camera. Is it true, he asked cheerfully, that you and your daughter are living with Adrian Vale? My blood turned to ice. What? I whispered. He stepped closer. Too close. Sources say he's supporting you financially. Are you in a relationship with him? Mia hid behind my leg. I shielded her instinctively. Please back up, I said, trembling. We're not answering anything. The reporter lifted his brows like he'd struck gold. So, you're confirming he's taking care of you? No, I snapped. I'm not confirming anything. Move away from us. And that was when the second camera appeared from behind, and then a third like wolves circling prey. Questions flew from every direction. Are you using him for money? Is he using you to fix his image? Is your daughter really sick? My vision blurred with fury. Leave us alone, I said through clenched teeth, pulling Mia toward the curb. But each step I took, they took too relentless, recording every move, every trembling breath. A man reached toward Mia's hat to push it back for a better shot. Something inside me snapped. Don't touch her, I shouted, but he laughed like it was all a game. A nightmare unfolding in slow motion. When the crosswalk signal finally changed, I rushed us across, half dragging Mia in my panic. She stumbled, coughing, terrified. I pulled her into my arms just as a camera shoved inches from my face. Grace, is this about money? Are you pregnant with his child? That last question hit me so hard I almost dropped to my knees. I pushed through the crowd, heart-racing vision tunneling until a familiar black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. Adrian stepped out before the car even fully stopped, his eyes, sharp jaw tight, moving faster than I'd ever seen him move. "Get away from them," he said, voice low and lethal. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. One the cameras caught instantly. Flashes erupted. Shutters clicked like gunfire. He pulled me and Mia behind him, shielding us with his body. Into the car, he said quietly, "Now." I obeyed without thinking, sliding into the back seat with Mia trembling in my arms. Adrian climbed in beside us, rather than returning to the front, slamming the door shut behind him as the driver peeled away from the curb. For a few long seconds, none of us spoke. Mia cried softly against my chest. My heart pounded so violently it felt like something was going to break. When Adrian finally turned toward me, the fury in his eyes wasn't for me. It was for them. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice raw. "They shouldn't have found you. They shouldn't have gotten near her." "How did they even know?" I whispered, shaking. "I didn't tell anyone where we were staying. Someone leaked it," he said darkly. "Or sold the information. My name draws attention, and attention draws vultures." I stared at him, breath shaking. "They said you were supporting us, that I was using you, that Mia was—" My voice broke. They treated her like she was a headline. He closed his eyes briefly, like the words physically hurt him. "Grace," he whispered, "this is what I was afraid of. This is why I wanted distance, because the moment people find out I care about something, they turn it into a weapon." I swallowed hard. "Is this because of your past?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation I heard the answer. "Your old world," I whispered, "is coming for us." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Yes." The city blurred past the windows as we sped through traffic. I held Mia tightly, rocking her gently, trying to calm my own panic so I could calm hers. When I finally looked at Adrian again, something inside me cracked the way it had when he told me about the child he couldn't save. "We can't stay here," I whispered. "Not if people are watching us. Not if they know your name. Or mine. Or hers." "I know," he said. "I already have a plan." The certainty in his voice terrified me. Not because I didn't trust him. Because I did. Too much. "Grace," he said softly, "I'll keep you safe. I promise." But as I stared at the city outside the window, at the flashing lights, and the cameras still chasing us like shadows, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that promises were fragile things, and that safety might be the one thing he could not guarantee. I did not leave Adrian's home because I stopped trusting him. I left because for the first time in years, I realized how fragile my daughter's safety was, how easily the world could twist love and kindness into weapons, and how quickly a single headline could dismantle the thin stability I had built. After the reporters cornered us, something inside me snapped the part of me wired for survival, roaring louder than reason, louder than the quiet certainty that Adrian had never once let anything happen to us. That night, while he was in the other room, talking in a low, urgent voice to someone on the phone, likely strategizing how to protect us, I stuffed Mia's clothes and her medicine into a backpack, lifted her sleepy body into my arms, and walked out into the cold. I left a note on the kitchen table with shaking hands. "We need space. Please don't come after us." I knew he would. That was the problem. The street outside his building was silent, the kind of silence that hums with possibility and danger all at once. I called the one person I hadn't spoken to in months, my Aunt Lydia, who lived 2 cities away. She answered on the second ring, heard my voice crack, and simply said, "Come home." So I did. I boarded a late-night bus with Mia curled against me, still recovering from her fear, her tiny breaths shallow, her fingers gripping Sonny the bear. I stared out the window the whole ride, trying not to imagine Adrian walking into that apartment kitchen, seeing the note running a hand through his hair, the way he did when he was trying not to break. I told myself leaving was the right choice. I told myself he was better off without the liability of a sick child and her terrified mother. I told myself a dozen lies because each one hurt less than the truth. When we arrived at my aunt's place, she wrapped her arms around us, held Mia like she was the most precious thing in the world, and tucked us into the spare room with fresh blankets and warm soup. Days passed quietly. No reporters, no men in dark sedans. No danger except the ache I carried inside me. The ache shaped exactly like the man I had walked away from. Mia asked for him every morning. "Where is Adrian? Is he coming? Does he miss me?" I forced a smile each time and said, "He's safe. We're safe. That's what matters." But I knew safety wasn't the same as peace, and peace was the one thing I hadn't felt since leaving him. 1 week later, Mia had a minor complication from her treatment. Nothing severe, but enough to bring back the familiar terror that lived beneath my ribs. My aunt drove us to the nearest hospital while I held Mia in the back seat, whispering soothing nonsense to stop her trembling. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and overheated vents. I filled out forms with shaking hands, heart pounding with every beep of a monitor. I kept checking the door because I half expected Adrian to walk through it. He didn't. Of course he didn't. I told him not to come, and he respected that. Somehow respecting me hurt worse than disobedience. After hours of tests, the doctor finally smiled and said Mia was stable, the symptoms expected and manageable. Relief made my knees weak. I sat beside her hospital bed, brushing her hair back, thanking every star in the sky that she was still fighting. Around midnight, when Mia had fallen asleep, I stepped out to call my aunt. She was parked outside, waiting, but told me to take my time. I hung up, slipped my phone into my pocket, and leaned against the hallway wall, exhausted. That was when I felt it. Someone watching me. My chest tightened as I turned. I expected a stranger, a nurse, a shadow, but what I saw made my breath stop. Adrian, standing at the end of the hallway, snow still clinging to his coat, hair damp, chest rising and falling like he had run the entire way. His eyes found mine instantly, and for a moment we just stared at each other, neither of us moving, the whole world narrowing to the 12 steps between us. I swallowed hard. "How did you find us?" He took a slow step forward. "I never stopped looking." His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even relieved. It was something quieter, something that felt like breaking open. I looked away, blinking back tears. "I told you not to come." "I know," he whispered, taking another step. "But you were scared. And when you're scared, I show up. That's not going to change." My throat burned. "How did you even know she was sick again?" "Your aunt called me," he said. "You told her everything about me." "I told her enough to know you'd come if something went wrong," she replied gently from behind him. I flinched. I didn't realize she had approached. She touched my arm. "You don't push away people who fight for you, Grace. Not in this life." Adrian stepped closer until he was right in front of me. He reached out but didn't touch me. He waited. "Is Mia okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "She is now." His shoulders sagged with relief. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they shone with something raw and unguarded. "Grace," he said quietly, "I'm not here to take her from you. I'm not here to pull you back into danger. I'm here because you and Mia are the only things that make sense to me anymore. And I can't fix what happened with the reporters, or the men who came to your door, or the past I walked away from. But I can be here. I can stand with you." My heart clenched so tightly it hurt. "And what happens when your past catches up to you again?" I whispered. "What happens when it puts her at risk? When it puts us at risk? Then I'll stand between you and it," he said simply. "Every time." My tears slipped free, then hot and unrestrained. "You can't promise that." "I can," he said softly, and I just did. The hallway felt too small for everything rising inside me. Fear, hope, anger, love, all tangled together. I took a shaky breath. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to choose you." He looked at me like I was breaking his heart. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I felt the warmth of him, the steadiness of him. "You already did," he whispered. "The moment you let me protect her." The moment you let me hold your fear. A sob escaped me, quiet but real. I'm so tired, Adrian. Then let me hold the tired, he murmured. Let me carry some of the fear. You don't have to do this alone. Behind us, Mia stirred softly in her hospital bed. I looked over my shoulder at her, my entire world wrapped in a child-sized blanket. And when I turned back to Adrian, he was still there, still waiting, still choosing us. And in that moment, I knew the truth. My world hadn't collapsed when I left him. It had only collapsed when I thought he wouldn't come after us. The night everything detonated began with a kind of peace that almost fooled me into believing the worst was behind us. After Mia was discharged, Adrian insisted we stay with my aunt instead of returning to the city. And though pride clawed at me, fear was louder, so I agreed. For 2 days, nothing happened. No reporters, no strange cars, no shadows lingering where they shouldn't be. Adrian stayed close but kept a respectful distance, sleeping on the couch downstairs, waking at every sound. Watching the windows the way someone watches a battlefield they once escaped but never really left. My aunt adored him instantly, which only made my heart more conflicted. Every time Mia laughed at one of his jokes or curled against his side during a movie, the invisible rope tying me to him pulled tighter. I wasn't ready to name what he meant to us, but I knew we had crossed into something I couldn't walk back from. On the third night, it was raining hard, the kind of pounding rain that makes the world blur behind sheets of water. Thunder murmured low in the distance as I tucked Mia into the guest bed, her eyelids already heavy. "Is Adrian still here?" she asked sleepily. I brushed her hair away. "He'll be downstairs." She smiled. "Good. He keeps the scary away." Her words sliced straight through the last layer of armor I pretended to have. When she drifted off, I stepped into the hallway, rubbing the tension from my neck. The house was dim, cozy quiet, except for the rain tapping the windows. Adrian was in the living room, sitting forward on the couch, with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might reveal the future if he looked hard enough. "Can we talk?" I asked softly. He lifted his head. "Always." I sat across from him, trying to steady the tremble in my hands. "You told me you left that life behind. You told me you walked away. But they still tracked us down. They still found us." His expression tightened. "Yes." "So tell me the truth," I whispered. "Are they coming back?" He hesitated, then stood slowly, walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. Rain streaked down the glass. His voice was low when he spoke. "They won't stop until they get what they want from me. And they think getting to me starts with getting to you." My breath caught. "Why us?" He turned, his eyes shadowed by something deep and haunted. "Because you're the first thing they've seen me protect in years." I swallowed hard, trying to absorb the weight of his words, trying to understand the man whose past hovered at the edges of every quiet moment. Before I could speak, a vibration shuddered in the air. Not thunder, not rain. Something else. Adrian stiffened instantly. He crossed the room in 3 strides and turned off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the space, broken only by the faint glow of the storm outside. "Stay here," he whispered. "Adrian, what? Stay." "Here." His voice dropped into a tone I had never heard before. Commanding. Cold. Focused. My pulse spiked as he moved through the shadows toward the kitchen, where he reached under the table and pulled out a small black case he must have placed there earlier. He opened it quietly. Inside was a handgun. My breath hitched. "Adrian," I whispered, "why do you have—" He didn't answer. He checked the chamber with practiced movements that made my stomach twist with the grim realization that his past wasn't just something he talked about. It was something he had lived, something he could slip back into if necessary. A sudden crack split the night. Not thunder, a gunshot, then another, then shouting. My aunt screamed from the back of the house. I bolted toward the hallway, but Adrian grabbed my wrist, pulling me hard behind him. "Get Mia," he said sharply. "Take her to the basement. Do not come upstairs until I get you. But move!" The force of the word jolted through me. I ran. My legs were shaking so violently I almost slipped on the hardwood floor. Mia woke up the moment I burst into the room, her eyes wide with terror. "Mommy, baby, it's okay," I lied, scooping her into my arms. "We have to go downstairs." "Okay, we're safe. I've got you." She clung to my neck, trembling. Another gunshot exploded somewhere near the front door. I nearly dropped to my knees. I reached the basement door and threw it open, hurrying down the narrow wooden steps, my breath coming in sharp gasps. My aunt was already there, pale, gripping her phone with trembling hands. "It won't call out," she whispered. "There's no signal." I locked the basement door and moved behind the shelves, crouching with Mia pressed to my chest, rocking her gently, even as my own tears streamed down my face. Above us, chaos erupted. Heavy footsteps, furniture scraping, a man shouting orders, and beneath it all the distinct, terrifying sound of Adrian moving fast, purposefully, violently. Then something crashed so loudly the whole house shook. "Adrian," I whispered, choking on fear. He was alone up there, outnumbered, fighting men who came armed, men who weren't afraid of hurting a child, a mother, anyone. My aunt squeezed my hand, whispering prayers under her breath. Mia sobbed into my sweater. Time dragged, each second stretching into a silent plea for Adrian to win or survive, or just stay alive long enough to return. Then footsteps thundered above us again. A crash, a groan, a shout. Silence. The kind of silence that made my heart stop. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Then slowly, heavily, someone descended the stairs. Wood creaked beneath his weight. My aunt squeezed my arm so tightly it hurt. I held Mia so close her breath warmed my collarbone. The steps approached one agonizing footstep at a time. Then his shadow appeared around the corner. Adrian. Bloody, bruised, breathing hard, but alive. When he saw us, something inside him broke. Relief, pain, fear, all at once. "It's over," he rasped, sinking to his knees in front of us. "Grace, they're gone." I didn't realize I was crying until he reached out with a shaking hand and brushed the tears from my cheek. "No one," he whispered, "will ever touch you or Mia again. I swear it." But even as he said the words, I knew the truth. This wasn't over, not even close. I had always believed names carried power, but I never understood how heavy a single name could feel until the night the truth finally caught up with us. After the gunfire stopped and Adrian sank bruised and bleeding into the basement, something inside me shifted, some instinct older than fear, rising up to meet the moment. I pressed Mia closer, feeling her tiny fingers grip my sweater. Her sobs soft but shaking her whole body. My aunt hovered near the shelves, whispering prayers, eyes wide with terror. Adrian was on his knees in front of us, one hand braced on the floor, the other clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. He tried to hide the pain, tried to keep his breathing steady, but the tremor in his jaw betrayed him. I reached out before I could stop myself and touched his face. His eyes closed at the contact as if my hand was the only thing anchoring him to the world. "We have to get you to a hospital," I whispered. He shook his head immediately. "No hospitals. They'll look for names, for records. They'll know where to find me. Where to find you." His voice was raspy, strained, but unbreakably certain. "Adrian." I said, my voice cracking. "You're hurt." He met my gaze with a softness that terrified me more than the gunfire. "I've been hurt worse." That single sentence spoke volumes about the life he had lived, the violence he had known, the things he had endured long before we ever met. But this time he wasn't alone. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. I caught him under the arms, my body barely strong enough to support him, but adrenaline made me brave. My aunt fetched towels and pressed them against his wounds while Mia watched with wide, frightened eyes. "It's okay, baby," I murmured to her, though my heart was racing too fast to believe my own lie. "He's going to be okay." Eventually, with my aunt's help, we got him upstairs to the couch. The house was still dim from the storm outside, rain hammering the windows like warning drums. I cleaned his wounds with trembling hands. He winced only once when I pressed too hard near his ribs. "Sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said quietly. "If it hurts, it means I'm still here." That line made me pause, made something break open in my chest. When I finished, he leaned back against the cushions, pale but conscious. "Grace," he murmured, "I need to tell you something before anyone else shows up, before any of this gets worse." Fear flickered through me. "What?" He looked at me with an expression so raw, so stripped of defenses I almost couldn't breathe. "My name isn't Adrian Vale." My heart stuttered. "What?" "It hasn't been for years." He swallowed hard, as if the truth burned on the way out. That name was a way to disappear, a way to bury the man I used to be. I stared at him, my hands going cold. "Then what's your real name?" He hesitated. "Will it put us in danger if you say it?" I whispered. His jaw tightened. "Keeping it hidden has already put you in danger." I wasn't sure if I wanted the truth or if I feared it would shatter what little stability we had left, but something deep inside me needed to hear it anyway. "Tell me," I said. His breathing slowed. His eyes locked onto mine like he was stepping off a cliff and trusting me to catch him. "My name is Aaron Vale." The syllables settled heavily in the air. Not unfamiliar, just wrong somehow, or maybe too familiar, like a name from a story I once heard but never understood. "Aaron," I repeated, and he closed his eyes as if hearing it aloud was both relief and punishment. Mia peeked around my arm, whispering, "Adrian." He forced a small smile for her. "You can still call me Adrian if you want. That part of me is real too." My aunt stood in the doorway, her hand over her heart. "Aaron," she murmured under her breath. "Why do I know that name?" "Adrian?" Aaron opened his eyes slowly and looked at her. "Because the people who came tonight used to work for the same man I did. A man who knows my real name. A man who doesn't forgive." A chill ran down my spine. "So we're not just running from criminals," I whispered. "We're running from someone who wants you back." "He doesn't want me back," he said softly. "He wants to punish me." My knees weakened. "For what?" He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had protected Mia, held her steady, carried us out of danger more than once. "For leaving, for taking something he thought belonged to him." "What did you take?" I asked. His breath caught. His voice was barely a whisper. "Myself." The truth hit me like a punch. He hadn't been running from justice. He'd been running from ownership, from a man who controlled people like assets, from a world that claimed him long before I ever did. I sat beside him slowly, my mind spinning, my heart ricocheting between terror and a fierce protective instinct I didn't know I had. "Aaron," I said softly, "why tell me now?" He looked up, eyes shining with something dangerously close to vulnerability. "Because tonight you almost lost me, and I realized you deserved the truth more than I deserved forgiveness." Tears threatened the edges of my vision. "You think I care about the name you had before. You think that changes what you've done for us." He exhaled a shaky breath. "People get hurt around me, Grace. Good people, innocent people, and people get protected around you," I shot back. "People get saved." His eyes darkened. "Don't make me something I'm not." "Then let me decide who you are," I whispered. Silence stretched between us, heavy but not cold. Outside, thunder rolled through the sky. Inside, a different storm settled. "Aaron Vale," I said again, this time not with fear, but with certainty. His gaze softened. "I haven't heard my real name spoken like that in years." "Get used to it," I murmured. "Because I'm not afraid of who you were. I only care about who you are now." Something in him broke then, not violently, not loudly, but quietly, like a lock turning inside a long, closed door. He reached for my hand with trembling fingers. "Grace," he whispered, "I don't know how to protect you from what's coming." I squeezed his hand. "Then we face it together." He stared at me like he didn't believe he deserved that kind of loyalty. "You're not afraid," he murmured. "I'm terrified," I said honestly. "But I'm more afraid of losing you." His breath hitched. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of us sitting in the dim light of my aunt's living room, surrounded by shadows but anchored by something stronger than fear. And as he leaned his head back against the couch, exhausted and unraveling, I realized something. Speaking his true name had not just revealed who he was, it revealed who he was becoming. Morning didn't come softly after the night Adrian revealed his real name. It arrived heavy and gray, like the world itself wasn't sure whether to keep spinning. I barely slept, drifting in and out of anxious half-dreams, while listening to Adrian breathe unevenly on the couch beside me. Every time he winced or shifted, fear clawed up my throat, but each time his breathing steadied again, relief washed over me, just enough to keep me from unraveling. When sunlight finally broke through the curtains, pale and trembling, I sat up slowly, my eyes gritty from hours of watching shadows stretch across the walls. Mia was curled against me, still asleep, her hand locked tightly in the fabric of my shirt. Adrian stirred, his brow pinched in pain, and when I reached out to touch his cheek, he opened his eyes. For a moment, he looked startled, as if he wasn't used to waking up to someone who cared whether he was alive. "You stayed," he whispered, voice rough. "Of course I stayed," I said, brushing hair from his forehead. "You think I'd leave after last night?" He breathed a quiet laugh that cracked at the edges. "You should have," he murmured. "It would have been safer." "Safer isn't the same as right," I said softly. "We're not running from you." His eyes softened with something I couldn't quite name, something that made my chest ache. My aunt appeared in the doorway with her robe tied around her and worry etched deep into her face. "We need a plan," she said firmly. "Those men could come back." The truth lingered in the room like smoke. Adrian pushed himself upright, fighting a grimace. "They won't come back today," he said. "Last night wasn't a message, it was a retrieval. They were sent to drag me in." My pulse faltered. "Drag you in? To who?" His jaw clenched. "Someone who thinks he owns me. Someone who doesn't take disobedience kindly." "What does he want now?" I whispered. Adrian lifted his eyes to meet mine, and the answer made my stomach drop. "Me." That single word held the force of a sentence. Mia stirred awake, then rubbing her eyes, her voice small as she whispered, "Adrian." He managed a soft smile for her. "I'm okay, sweetheart." She climbed onto the couch and curled into his side, as if he were the safest place she knew. And despite everything he'd told me about his past, a part of me believed she was right. My aunt made breakfast, though none of us had the appetite to eat. Adrian stared at the table for a long moment, before speaking quietly. "I have to go back." The words sliced through me like ice. "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not. If I disappear, they'll come for you," he said simply. "If I run, they'll punish anyone they think I care about." My breath shook. "There has to be another way." "There is," he said, his eyes steady. "I give them what they want." "You're not property," I snapped. "You're not theirs." "I'm not." He agreed. "But they don't see it that way." I stood, feeling anger and terror collide violently inside me. "I'm not letting you walk back into hell." "Grace," he said softly. "I won't let them touch you or Mia." "You can't protect us if you're dead," I whispered. Silence stretched. Rain tapped the windows. Mia hummed to her stuffed bear. My aunt wiped her tears when she hoped no one was looking. Then Adrian lifted his eyes again, and something in them had changed. Resolve, acceptance, and something else that made my heart split. "I'm not planning to go alone," he said. I frowned. "What does that mean?" He exhaled slowly. "Last night I sent a message to someone I trust. Someone who can help." Before I could ask who, a car rolled quietly to a stop in front of the house. Not the dark sedan from yesterday. A different vehicle. Sleek, unmarked, professional. My aunt's breath hitched. "Is that them?" "No," Adrian said, standing slowly and wincing despite himself. "He's here." The knock on the door was firm, controlled, familiar to Adrian in a way that instantly tightened my stomach. When I opened the door, a man around Adrian's age stood on the porch wearing a bulletproof vest under his jacket. His eyes flicked over my shoulder. "Aaron," he said. Adrian stepped forward. Cal? Cal nodded once. You said it was urgent. You said there was a kid. Adrian gestured toward Mia, who clung cautiously to my side. And you said, Cal murmured that he found you. He did, Adrian replied. And he wants me back. Cal's face hardened. Then we end this. Tonight. I stared between them, shock washing through me in waves. End this? You mean, fight them? We don't have a choice, Adrian said quietly. They won't stop. What about the police? I asked, desperate for logic. If we report Grace? Adrian said, stepping closer, you don't understand. These aren't men the police can handle. These aren't men who get arrested. These are men who disappear. Something inside me cracked open. Then, what happens to you? His expression softened painfully. Whatever happens, he said, I need you and Mia safe. Cal studied me, then nodded once. We'll get you somewhere remote. Secure. She and the kid go with me. Aaron comes with me long enough to lure them out. Then we take them down. The words made me dizzy. No, I whispered. No, you can't. You can't do this alone. Adrian stepped forward and took my arms gently. I'm not alone, he said, and I need you to trust me. Just this once without fighting me. Tears burned my eyes. I don't want to lose you. You won't, he whispered. Not if you let me protect you. Then he leaned his forehead against mine, just long enough for me to feel his breath tremble. Grace, he said softly, I need to tell you something. My breath froze. What? His next words came out quiet but steady, as if he had been holding them for months. I love you. Tears spilled instantly down my cheeks. His thumb brushed them away. I didn't plan it, he said. But you and Mia, you're my family. Before I could speak, Cal cleared his throat. We should go. But Adrian didn't look away from me. Whatever happens next, he said, I need you to remember something. What? You're the light, he whispered. The first light I've seen in years. My chest tightened so fiercely I couldn't breathe. You come back to me, I said. Both of you. Promise me. Adrian cupped my face gently. I promise. And somehow, despite the storm waiting outside and the danger closing in around us, something broke through the fear. Something warm. Something steady. Something like dawn. Not a promise of safety, but a promise of hope. And as we stepped into the gray morning toward whatever future waited for us, I realized something with absolute certainty. This was the moment everything turned to light. In a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, stories like this one remind us why we stay, why we listen, and why we hold on to the fragile threads that connect us to one another. If you are still here, hearing the echo of Grace's fear, the weight of Adrian's confession, the innocence of Mia's smile, then it means something inside you. Recognized a truth we too often push aside, that even the most broken people deserve a place to land. That kindness has the power to rewrite endings, and that second chances sometimes arrive in the most unexpected ways. Maybe you saw a bit of yourself in Grace, someone who has been carrying her life in both hands for years, trying to stay strong while the world took more than it ever gave back. Maybe you recognized Adrian's quiet suffering the way someone can stand tall on the outside while fighting every day to silence the ghosts that never learned to let go. Or maybe, just maybe, you felt what Mia represents, that small flicker of hope that refuses to die even when life tries to dim it. And if any part of this story touched you, moved you, or made you stop long enough to feel something real, then I want to invite you to stay with us a little longer. Because this channel is not just a place for stories. It is a space for people who still believe in compassion, in redemption in ordinary moments that change lives in extraordinary ways. It is a home for anyone who has ever lost something precious and dared to love again, for those who know how deep hurt can run and still choose to heal anyway. When you subscribe, you are not just joining a channel. You are joining a community that believes that a single act of kindness can turn a stranger into family, that even the darkest night can shift toward morning, and that sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with someone simply saying, I'm here. You will find stories that lift you when you feel alone, stories that remind you of your own strength, stories that help you breathe a little easier at the end of a long day. We create each one with care, depth, and respect for the lives behind the lessons because we know that somewhere out there, someone needs to hear them. So if this story made your heart ache in the best way, if it brought memories to the surface, or made you think of someone you miss, if it gave you comfort or courage, or even a moment of peace, I hope you'll take a second to hit that subscribe button and let our next story find you. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that life can still surprise them with grace. Leave a comment about the moment in this story that stayed with you because your voice might be the very thing someone else needs to hear tonight. And above all, keep your heart open. You never know when the next chapter of your life will begin quietly with a knock at the door, a name spoken in trust, or a small child climbing into your arms and reminding you that love has a way of finding us even after we thought our story was over. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. And thank you for believing that light can return even after the longest night. Your next story begins soon. Stay close.